This summer, the world's greatest athletes are competing on the global stage in front of an audience of billions. They've been training their whole lives for this moment, and now you get the chance to hear their stories up close and personal. This is Nike On Air, a series about elite athletes brought to you by Nike. You'll hear from the world's fastest woman, Tatiana McFadden, the breakout breaking star, Sunny Choi, basketball legend Dawn Staley, and more. Listen to Nike On Air starting July 7th, only on the Womanica podcast feed. Hello, from Wonder Media Network, I'm Jenny Kaplan, and this is Womanica. This month, we're celebrating women who performed physical and mental feats in sports. They overcame societal barriers, personal struggles, and fierce competition to pursue their dreams of glory. We're talking about athletes. In 1996, the best gymnasts in the world were all gathered in one place, Atlanta, under the lights of the Georgia Dome. They were there for the Summer Olympics. The women of the U.S. gymnastics team were the underdogs. They had never won gold. The Russians had taken home that honor every Olympics since 1948. But over the course of the competition, the underdogs had risen to the challenge. By the last event, the U.S. team had a solid lead over the Russians. It looked like they were going to take home gold. But then they began the vault competition. One of the American gymnasts fell, twice. The team's hope of victory was slipping away. There was just one person left to compete. One who could make or break the team's chances at the gold. Her name was Kerri Strug. The crowd watched with bated breath as Kerri gazed down the 75-foot runway that led to the vault. She squared her shoulders, took a deep breath, and started to sprint towards the vault. What happened next captivated the world and changed the way that female gymnasts were perceived. Let's talk about Kerri Strug. Kerri Strug was raised in Tucson, Arizona. By the time she was born, her older sister had already started competing in gymnastics. So Kerri, who wanted to be just like her sister, started learning gymnastics too when she was 3 years old. At the age of 8, Kerri was competing in gymnastics meets and excelling in the sport. By the time she was 12, Kerri decided she wanted to try to make it to the Olympics. That might sound young, but most gymnasts hit their peak in their teenage years. She was the perfect age to make a go for it. So Kerri moved, by herself, to Houston to train with Bela Karolyi, a gymnastics legend known for his success on the podium and his ruthless coaching tactics. Kerri began training 6 to 7 days a week for 8 hours a day. Just a few years later, in 1992, she qualified for the 1992 Barcelona Olympic Games. Kerri was 14 years old, the youngest person on the American Olympic team. She helped her team cinch the bronze medal, but she just missed making it into the top 3 in all-around competition. Kerri's career was on the rise, but then Bela announced he was retiring, leaving her without a coach. Over the next 3 years, Kerri trained with 3 different coaches, persevering through multiple severe injuries. But she wasn't connecting with any of her coaches the way she had with Bela. Her Olympic dreams seemed out of reach. Then, in 1995, Bela announced he was coming out of retirement. Kerri flew back to Houston to train with him once more. A year later, she'd secured her spot on the 1996 Olympic team, which is how Kerri found herself in Atlanta, staring down the 75-foot runway of the vault, with the fate of the U.S. team resting on her shoulders. Kerri wasn't a star on the Olympic team by any means. Bela, her own coach, once said, "You'll never see Kerri on a Wheaties box." But now, all eyes were on her.
So Kerri Strug, it is up to her. If she can score 9.493 or better, then she will win the team gold for the USA. She's the last to go. She's the only one who can do it.
Kerri breathed in and out. She thought to herself, "You've done this vault 1,000 times, so just go out and do it." She took off at a sprint, did a back handspring onto the vault, and then pushed herself up, launching herself into the air, turning once and then twice before falling down and landing with the sound of a snap. Kerri had fallen backwards on her landing, and during her fall, the bone in her left ankle had been shoved forward and then back into place. She had 2 torn ligaments. But Kerri didn't know any of this yet. Standing on the other side of the vault, her ankle throbbing with pain, Kerri only knew that her shaky landing might not have been good enough to ensure her team the gold. She had 30 seconds to decide whether she was going to vault again. She looked at her coach, Bella, and asked, "Do we need this?" He told her that they did. So once again, Kerri stepped up to the runway leading up to the vault. On her injured ankle, she broke into a sprint. Just like before, she leapt high into the air. As she spun once, twice, the whole audience held their breath. Finally, Kerri landed perfectly on both feet. As she hit the mat, Kerri heard a second snap. But before she succumbed to the pain, she threw her arms up into the typical gymnast pose, smiling for the judges. Then she hopped on her right leg to turn to face the crowd. Finally, after Kerri was sure it was all over, she crumpled to the ground in tears, clutching her ankle. Her score was a 9.712.
She has done it! Tonight she was there for Bella, for her team, for her country, and for herself.
The USA women's gymnastics team had won the gold medal. Later, Kerri and her coaches realized that she didn't actually need to do the second vault. They could have won gold without it. Regardless, Kerri's ability to compete through immense pain captivated the world. Bella later said that she showed the world that gymnasts have the hearts of tigers. After the Olympics, Kerri got to bask in her newfound fame. She went on talk shows, toured with Disney's World on Ice, and was featured on a Wheaties box. Eventually, Kerri graduated from Stanford with a master's degree in sociology and began working with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Program. She lives in Arizona with her husband and 2 children. All month, we're talking about athletes. For more information, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Womanica Podcast. Special thanks to Liz Kaplan, my favorite sister and co-creator. Talk to you tomorrow. This summer, the world's greatest athletes are competing on the global stage in front of an audience of billions. They've been training their whole lives for this moment, and now you get the chance to hear their stories up close and personal. This is Nike On Air, a series about elite athletes brought to you by Nike. You'll hear from the world's fastest woman, Tatiana McFadden, the breakout breaking star, Sunny Choi, basketball legend Dawn Staley, and more. Listen to Nike On Air starting July 7th, only on the Womanica podcast feed.
I'm Jordan Gonsalves, and I'm a journalist. Join me on my new podcast, But We Loved, where queer elders recount the amazing history they've lived through.
In the middle of Wall Street, they stopped traffic. They were doing a die-in.
And in the process, share little gems of wisdom for the next generation.
The key is to understanding yourself, learning to love and embrace yourself.
You can listen to But We Loved on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Guess what, Will?
What's that, Mango?
I've been trying to write a promo for our podcast, Part-Time Genius, but even though we've done over 250 episodes, we don't really talk about murders or cults.
I mean, we did just cover the Illuminati of cheese, so I feel like that makes us pretty edgy. We also solve mysteries like how Chinese is your Chinese food and how do dollar stores make money? And then, of course, can you game a dog show?
So what you're saying is everyone should be listening.
Listen to Part-Time Genius on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2009, Mitrice Richardson was released from the Malibu Lost Hills Sheriff Station, and she never made it home. Nearly a year later, Mitrice's remains were found in a canyon 6 miles from the station. Her death is Malibu's greatest unsolved mystery. I'm Dana Goodyear. In Lost Hills, Dark Canyon, what happened to Mitrice Richardson? Listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.